Hello, friends. Yesterday, I spoke about my thoughts on the current situation in our country and the role of young people in protest and movements. Today, I want to take that discussion one step further. Let us assume that a protest begins with a genuine cause. People come together because they believe that something is wrong. They want justice, they want accountability, they want their voices to be heard. That is their democratic right. But here is the question I want to ask today. What happens when anti-social elements enter a movement that began with a genuine cause? What happens when people who have no interest in the original issue use the protest as an opportunity to create violence, provoke confrontation, damage public property, or create fear and instability? And what happens when the actions of a few end up destroying the credibility of thousands of peaceful protesters? This is a serious issue that we need to discuss because a genuine protest can be weakened from within, not necessarily because the original cause is wrong, but because the movement becomes vulnerable to people with completely different intentions. The moment violence enters a peaceful movement, the narrative changes. The moment public property is destroyed, public sympathy begins to disappear. The moment security forces are attacked, the genuine demands of peaceful protesters can be overshadowed by images of confrontation and disorder. And ultimately, the people who started the protest for a genuine reason may find themselves losing control of their own movement. So today, I want to explore a difficult question. How can we distinguish between a genuine protester and someone who is simply using a protest as an opportunity to create chaos? And perhaps, even more importantly, who should take responsibility when a genuine movement is hijacked by antisocial elements? The protesters, the political leadership, the organizers, the authorities, or all of us as a society. I don't claim to have all the answers, but I believe this is a conversation we need to have because a genuine cause deserves to be protected from anyone who wants to exploit for violence, disorder, or personal gain. A peaceful protest should remain peaceful. And when the actions of a few threaten to destroy the voice of the many, we must have the courage to speak about it. Today, I want to look at the issue from a slightly different perspective. I want to talk about something that can happen to almost any genuine movement. The entry of antisocial elements into a protest that may have started with a legitimate cause. Let me make one thing very clear before I continue. I'm not saying that every person participating in a protest is an antisocial element. I'm not saying that every protest is wrong. And I'm not saying that people do not have the right to raise their voices. In a democracy, people have every right to question the government. They have every right to demand justice. They have every right to ask for accountability. And they have every right to peacefully express their disagreement. That is democracy. That is the strength of a free society. But there is a very important distinction that we must understand. There is a difference between peaceful protest and creating chaos in the name of protest. There is a difference between raising your voice and silencing others through intimidation. There is a difference between demanding justice and using violence to get what you want. And this is where the problem begins. Imagine a group of ordinary citizens coming together. They have a genuine concern. They believe something is wrong. Perhaps they feel that a government decision is unfair. Perhaps they believe that a leader should be held accountable. Perhaps they are demanding justice for something that has affected their community. They come together peacefully. They raise their voices. They carry placards. They make speeches. They submit petitions. They demand answers. There is nothing wrong with that. In fact, this is an important part of democracy. But now imagine that somewhere along the way, other individuals enter the moment. People who may not actually care about the original cause. People who are looking for an opportunity to create disorder. People who want confrontation. People who want to provoke the security forces. People who want to damage public property. People who want to create fear. And suddenly, the entire character of the protest begins to change. The genuine cause is slowly pushed into the background, and chaos takes center stage. This is the real danger because when violence enters a protest, the original message can be lost. Imagine thousands of peaceful protesters demanding something legitimate, but then a small group starts throwing stones, someone damages public property, someone attacks a security personnel, someone sets something on fire. What does the public see? Do they see the original demand? Do they hear the legitimate concerns? Often no. They see only the violence. They see the distractions. They see the confrontations. And suddenly, the entire movement is judged by the actions of a few. That is deeply unfortunate because the people who came with a genuine purpose may have nothing to do with that violence, but they are now associated with it. Their message is drowned out. Their credibility is damaged, and the cause they came to support becomes secondary. This is why every protest movement must be extremely careful about who is allowed to influence it, because once a movement loses control of its own direction, it becomes very difficult to bring it back. And this brings me to an important question. When a genuine protest becomes violent, who benefits from it? Does the ordinary student benefit? Does the daily wage worker benefit? Does the small business owner benefit? Does the common citizen benefit? Does the original cause benefit? Or does someone else benefit from the chaos? These are the questions that we must ask. We should not blindly assume that everyone participating in a movement has the same objective. People can join the same protest for completely different reasons. Some may genuinely believe in the cause. Some may be there because their friends are there. Some may be influenced by social media. Some may be politically motivated. And some may simply be looking for an opportunity to create disorder. That is why critical thinking is so important, especially among young people. Before joining any movement, we should ask, what exactly are we demanding? What is the peaceful path towards achieving it? Who is leading this movement? What is the end goal? And what happens if the situation turns violent? These questions are not signs of weakness. They are signs of responsibility. I want to ask the organizers, if you organize a protest, you have some responsibility. If you lead a movement, you have a responsibility. If thousands of people trust your leadership, you have an even greater responsibility. You must ensure that the movement remains focused on its original objective. You must discourage violence. You must prevent the destruction of public property. You must ensure that peaceful protesters are not placed in danger. And you must clearly distance yourself from anyone who attempts to turn a legitimate protest into a violent confrontation. Because if you remain silent when violence begins, if you allow antisocial elements to take control, then eventually the question will be asked to you, Did you lose control of your moment? Or did you allow it to happen? A genuine movement should have the courage to reject violence. A genuine cause should not need stones. It should not need destruction. It should not need intimidation. A strong argument should be able to stand on its own. And if your cause is genuinely important, then you should be able to defend it with facts, evidence, dialogues, and democratic means, not by violence, not by destruction, and not by fear. Because the moment violence becomes the face of a movement, then genuine cause behind that movement begins to disappear. And that is where I want to take this conversation further. Because the biggest question is not only how anti-social elements enter genuine movements, the biggest question is what happens to our young people when they become caught in the middle of it. Yes, our young people. And this is where my concern becomes much deeper. Because young people are the energy of any society. They are passionate, they are idealistic, they want justice, they want change, they want a better future. And that is exactly why their energy can be extremely powerful. But that same energy can also be misdirected. Think about a young student who joins a protest. Perhaps he genuinely believes in the cause. Perhaps she genuinely wants justice. They may not have any political agenda. They may simply believe that something is wrong and want their voices to be heard. But when a large crowd gathers, the atmosphere can change very quickly. Emotions become more stronger. Crowd psychology will take over. People begin shouting. Slogans becomes more aggressive. Someone provokes the crowd. Someone throws an object. Another person responds, and suddenly a peaceful gathering can turn into confrontation. The young student who came to peacefully express an opinion may suddenly find themselves standing in the middle of chaos. And at that moment, something is very important is lost: the ability to think independently. There is a psychological phenomenon that happens in large crowds. When you are surrounded by thousands of people shouting the same slogans, expressing the same anger, and reacting emotionally to the same events, it becomes very easy to stop thinking as an individual. You become part of that crowd, and when the crowd moves, you also move. When the crowd shouts, you shout. When the crowd becomes angry, you become angry. And sometimes people end up doing things they would never have done alone. This is why young people must be especially careful. Never surrender your individual judgments to the emotions of a crowd. You can support a cause, you can disagree with the government, you can demand change, but you must always retain the ability to ask, is what I'm doing right now actually helping the cause I believe in? That one question can make all the difference. Now, let us talk about another uncomfortable reality: politics. Whenever there is a large movement, political interests may try to influence it. This is not unique to one country or one political party. It is a reality of political life around the world. A large crowd creates visibility. A large movement creates media attention. And media attention creates political opportunity. This is where young protesters must be careful, because the person standing beside you may not necessarily have the same objective that you have. You may be protesting because you genuinely care about an issue. Someone else may be looking at the same protest as an opportunity to advance a political agenda. The two of you may be standing in the same crowd, but you may be fighting for completely different reasons. That is why we should never blindly follow anyone simply because they speak passionately. We must start ask questions. We must examine facts. We must listen to different perspectives. And most importantly, we must think for ourselves. Now, let me ask the young people who are watching this video something. If you spend weeks on the streets, who pays the price? If your education is interrupted, who pays the price? If you miss your examination, who pays the price? If you lose valuable time that could have been spent developing your skills, who pays the price? The answer is only you will be paying that price. The people who influence you may eventually move on. Political leaders will continue their political careers. Organizations will continue their activities. People who encourage you to join the movement may eventually turn to their own lives, but you will still have to face your future. You will still have to find a job. You will still have to build a career. You will still have to support your family. You will still have to achieve your dreams. And believe me, nobody else can do that for you. That is why I believe our youth must be extremely careful. Your anger is valuable, your passion is valuable, your energy is valuable, but don't give it away blindly to anyone. There is a difference between courage and recklessness. Standing up for what you believe in can be courageous, but blindly following a crowd into violence is not courage. Questioning authority can be courageous, but attacking another person because they disagree with you is not courage. Demanding justice can be courageous, but destroying public property is not courage. Real courage requires discipline and self control. Real courage requires the ability to stand by your principles even when everyone around you is losing control. That is the kind of courage our young people need, not just blind anger, blind loyalty, and blind obedience. They require independent thinking. There is another group that we often forget during these situations. Yes, our security forces. When a protest becomes violent, they are placed directly in the line of confrontation. These men and women are also our citizens. They have families, they have parents, they have children, they have their own dreams. They are performing their duties. Of course, security forces must also act responsibility and within the law. Any allegation of excessive force must be investigated through proper legal and democratic mechanism. But at the same time, attacking security personnel cannot be justified simply because they are standing on the other side of a protest. Violence against them does not strengthen a cause. Actually, it weakens it. And when a protest becomes a battle between protesters and security forces, the original issue can disappear completely. The public conversation changes. The demand for justice becomes a conversation about law and order. The genuine cause becomes secondary, and once again, the people who started the movement may lose control of the very movement they created. So the big question we need to ask ourselves that are we building a movement or are we creating a battlefield? Are we trying to solve a problem or are we simply creating a bigger one? Are we fighting for our future or are we allowing our future to be sacrificed in the process? These are not easy questions, but they are necessary questions because if a genuine cause is important, then we must protect it. And if our youth are the future of this country, then we must protect them too. Because when a genuine movement is hijacked by violence and disorder, everyone loses. And the most important question becomes how do we protect the genuine cause without allowing it to be destroyed by those who want to be exploited? What can we do about it? How do we protect a genuine cause? How do we ensure that peaceful protesters are not overshadowed by violence? And how do we make sure that our young people are not used as instruments in somebody else's agenda? I believe the answer begins with one word: responsibility. Every person has got a responsibility. If you participate in a protest, you have some responsibilities. You have the right to raise your voice, but you also have the responsibility to ensure that your actions do not harm innocent people. You have the right to criticize the government, but you do not have the right to destroy public property. You have the right to demand justice, but you do not have the right to attack another person. You have the right to disagree, but you do not have the right to silence everyone who disagrees with you. A protest is meaningful only when the message remains stronger than the noise. So, if you are part of a movement, ask yourself: am I contributing to the solution, or am I becoming part of the problem? That question should remain in the mind of every protester. The organizers of a movement have a even greater responsibility. If you bring thousands of people together, you must also ensure that the movement remains peaceful. You must clearly communicate what the movement stands for. You must establish boundaries. And when someone crosses those boundaries, you must have the courage to say, "This is not what we stand for." If someone attempts to provoke violence, reject them. If someone attempts to damage public property, stop them. If someone attempts to attack security forces, distance yourself from them. A genuine movement should not be afraid to reject those who try to hijack it, because the credibility of the entire movement depends on how it responds to the actions of a few. Political leaders also have some responsibilities. If you support a protest, you must also support peaceful democratic methods. You cannot encourage anger and then pretend to have no responsibility when that anger turns to violence. You cannot mobilize young people and then abandon them when the consequences arrive. Leadership means responsibility. If you genuinely believe in the cause, then help find a solution. Engage in dialogue. Use democratic institutions. Use the legal systems. Present evidence. Demand accountability. But do not allow young people to become tools in a political confrontation, because political battles are temporary, but the consequences of violence can last for generations. The government and authorities also have a role. When people protest, the first response should not always be confrontation. People need to feel that their voices are being heard. Legitimate concern should be acknowledged. Dialogue should be encouraged. And when allegations are made, they should be investigated transparently. At the same time, maintaining public order is also the responsibility of the authorities. Peaceful protesters must be protected. Ordinary citizens must be protected. Public property must be protected. And security personnel must also be protected. The rule of law must apply equally to everyone. That is the foundation of a functioning democracy. And finally, we also have some responsibility, all of us. We live in an age where information travels faster than ever. A video can go viral within minutes. A rumor can reach millions of people in hours. A misleading message can create anger before the truth has even had a chance to appear. So before we share something, before we forward something, before we believe something, we need to stop for a moment, think, verify, and ask, is this actually true? Because sometimes the most powerful weapon in a conflict is not a stone, it is misinformation, and sometimes the person who spread it may never have to face the consequences, but ordinary people do. Let me say finally, very clearly, a genuine cause deserves respect. A genuine grievance deserves to be heard. A peaceful protest deserves to be protected. But the moment anti-social elements begin to exploit that moment, the people who genuinely believe in the cause must speak up. They must say, not in our name, not in the name of justice, not in the name of democracy, not in the name of youth, not in the name of our country, because violence cannot be the foundation of a better society. Destruction cannot create progress, and hatred cannot build a better future. And finally, now I want to speak directly to the young people. You are the most valuable resource of this country. My kids, not the politicians, not the political parties, not organization. It is you. Your education, your skills, your creativity, your ideas, your courage, your ability to think. These are the things that will shape the future. So don't let anyone use your anchor against you. Don't allow anyone to turn your passion into hatred. Don't allow anyone to convince you that violence is the only way to create change. You have a powerful voice. Use it wisely. Question, debate, discuss, protest peacefully, vote, participate, but always think independently, because your future is too valuable to be sacrificed for somebody else's agenda. So let me come back to the question I asked at the beginning. When a genuine protest is hijacked by antisocial elements, who loses actually? The government? Maybe. The political parties? Perhaps. But ultimately, the biggest losers are ordinary citizens. The student who misses their education, the worker who loses a day's income, the business owner who loses customers, the patient who cannot reach a hospital, the family that fears for its safety, and the peaceful protesters whose genuine voices are drowned out. That is why we must protect genuine movements from those who want to exploit them. We must protect our youth from manipulation. We must protect our democracy from violence. And we must protect our country from unnecessary instability. I am not against any protest. I am not against questioning authority. I am not against demanding justice. I am not against young people raising their voices. I am against violence. My final message is that I'm not against any protests. I'm not against questioning authority. I'm not against demanding justice. And I'm not against young people raising their voices. But I am against violence, destruction, intimidation. And I'm against anyone who uses a genuine cause as an excuse to create chaos. A protest should be a voice for change, not a weapon of destruction. A movement should bring people together, not tear society apart. And our youth should be building the future, not becoming victims of someone else's agenda. So the next time you see a protest, don't just ask, what are they protesting about? Ask another question too. Who is influencing this movement? Where is this movement heading? And most importantly, is this bringing us closer to a solution or taking us further away from one? Because a genuine cause deserves a genuine solution, and our country deserves better than chaos. Think before you follow, question before you believe, and always remember, Your voice is powerful. Use it wisely. Thank you.